Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 20 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we have our first Thursday Night Football of the season, and we have a pretty good matchup that we're going to discuss for tonight.
Actually, we have our second Thursday Night Football matchup of the season.
Well, I don't count last week as Thursday Night Football. It's kickoff. I don't know.
I got you. Okay,
sure.
Fair enough. I respect that. But yeah, that's true. And I mean, to me, you got two of the best teams in football going up against each other.
And two of the biggest offensive powerhouses. This should be a high-scoring game, and it should produce a lot of fantasy points for your team. But we're gonna talk about that. This whole show on Thursdays is going to be based on our projections for the Thursday Night Football game. There are some injury updates we, of course, have to talk about, and we'll give you the latest to help you set those lineups for Sunday. But first, if this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. We do this show on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The audio versions can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, basically anywhere where you could find a podcast. You could find us, the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you'd rather watch the show with video and audio, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. We also do a fifth show every week. That's going to be our live show, Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to get you ready for your week. We're going to get you ready for your Sunday. We'll answer all of your questions if you're there in the chat. We got a lot of questions last Sunday. We do appreciate that. Hopefully you come back and we can help you out for week 2, 3, and so on and so forth. You could watch that live show every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you want to follow us and interact with us on social media, and please do, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is PrimeTimeFFPod. Facebook and YouTube is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcasts. Going to start off with some injury updates and some news. Not a lot to break down, but we will discuss it a little bit. Keenan Allen is officially already in. I will preface this. Obviously, since you're listening on Thursday morning, we didn't record at 6 a.m. We are recording as late as possible on Wednesday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So this news is the most up-to-date news we could possibly give you if you weren't recording at 6 a.m. Thursday morning. Keenan Allen is already ruled out for tonight's Thursday Night Football game with a hamstring injury. We both saw this coming. We'll talk about this, during our projections a little bit more. He hopes to be back for week 3. There's not much more to say on that. This is a fun one, though. Kenneth Walker, he had his hernia injury that he suffered a couple weeks ago. He's expected to play in week 2. I saw a report earlier this week that he was good to go in week 2. Then I saw a report earlier that he was expected to play, but has to get through the week. He did practice full on Wednesday. What do you make of this one, Nick? Because Rashad Penny looked pretty good on Monday night. However, they drafted Kenneth Walker, I believe, in round 2. I don't think this is just Penny's, backfield. I think that they're going to have a role for Kenneth Walker, and I think they want to see what the rookie can do in this game, even if it's for a couple catches.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I'm very high on Rashad Penny for the year. I think his ADP was very low, but it really comes down to how good Kenneth Walker is. I think he's a talented player, but at the end of the day, when Rashad Penny has been healthy, no matter who else he shared that backfield with, he's been a dominant fantasy player. Last week, it didn't show it points-wise, but if you actually watch the game, he was getting a good chunk of change in those yards against a tough rush defense. So the Seattle backfield, and we know by nature Pete Carroll's going to run that ball right up the middle. So I like both of them. I'm not ready to play Kenneth Walker. I don't need to see him 100%, and I don't like starting rookies in their first, second, third game in the NFL unless if they have that massive boom early on. So for me, I'm not playing Walker yet. I have him rostered in 2 leagues. I'm comfortable leaving him on my bench. If he booms, great. I get to play him next week. If he doesn't, then he sits on the bench.
Would you play Penny against San Francisco, though?
If I had to, I probably would have him ranked as a high-end RB3, low-end RB2. So I wouldn't want to play him, but if I needed to, if I had Elijah Mitchell go down, that would be a good plug-and-play.
All right. The Bucs are basically all banged up. Julio Jones' knee didn't practice Wednesday. Russell Gage hamstring didn't practice Wednesday. Mike Evans calf limited Wednesday. He's going to play. Leonard Fournette hamstring limited Wednesday. He should play. Chris Godwin, hamstring. We knew he was not going to practice, did not practice Wednesday. My biggest worry about the Bucs right now is not any of these players. It's actually Tom Brady. Tom Brady's fantasy value to me is almost outside the top 10 if some of these guys aren't playing or are playing injured. Obviously, losing Godwin's already a pretty big deal. But then, Fournette was a top 10 fantasy running back last year. Mike Evans, top 10 fantasy wide receiver. Julio Jones could be a huge boost for Brady if he plays. This is one to definitely monitor. We'll talk about it more on Friday. But to me, Brady's play is a lot more unattractive to me, knowing the injuries of these guys. And the injuries themselves aren't worrying me. It's actually Brady that worries me a bit more.
Yeah, and with veteran quarterbacks, you always see they go to who they trust. And to have two of these guys out and then they already have a banged-up offensive line, I mean, Brady's value, it doesn't – I would never bet against Tom Brady, but if I had to bet 4 other options, I probably would. I mean, I would transition to Kirk Cousins, no problem, if I see more than one of these guys miss the game.
I have Kyler in a league with Brady, and I'll play Kyler this week. I think I have Brady in another league. Do I have him in our league? Maybe I want to see what league I have Brady, and then I have him in our league. I have Kirk Cousins on my bench. I think I'm going to play Kirk Cousins this week
There you
over
go.
Tom Brady. DeAndre Swift's ankle. He did not practice on Friday. A little worrisome because they elevated Justin Jackson from the practice squad earlier this week. But then in an interview after Wednesday's practice, Swift said, "I'm not at all concerned about missing week 2." So he was the running back like 3 or 4 on week 1. I'm not super concerned unless he really misses Thursday and then is limited on Wednesday's practice, but I'm not super duper concerned.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all. I mean, he's a monster running back, and Jamal Williams vultured 2 touchdowns from him. If he didn't vulture one of those, he would have been the RB2. If he didn't vulture both, he was the RB1 on the week. So you cannot fade DeAndre Swift at all. If he's out there, you're playing him.
Kittle didn't practice Wednesday due to the groin. Just put a gun to my head at this point. He's on my dynasty team. Like, I picked up Zach Ertz, but still, like, come on, dude. Najee Harris foot. He was limited on Wednesday. He should play. Not much to say there. J.K. Dobbins knee. He was a full participant in practice, I believe, for the first time this season on Wednesday. It looks like he could be gearing up to play this weekend against the Dolphins. Alan Lazard with his ankle practice Wednesday. I don't know if it was full or limited or anything like that. T. Higgins was in concussion protocol. He cleared it on Wednesday and made a limited appearance at practice. He should be good to go for Sunday against Dallas. Harrison Butker, we don't usually talk kickers, but he is out due to his ankle injury. You should go pick out, a
just
kicker.
Go keep an eye out, because especially if you're in Yahoo, your kicker is like under your bench. Like, make sure you know that Butker's out. Like, that's a big one to just keep in mind if you have him, because you will miss him.
Yep. And Dak Prescott, he's not going on the IR. Jerry Jones expects him to be back within 4 weeks, which I don't see being possible. This is why I said don't drop him. Like, put him on your IR spot.
Yeah. So this is the weird thing, right? So Drew Brees had the same injury, and we watched him miss 5 games. And they went 5-0, and it was like a good run from Brees and all of them. But like, for me, it's possible a younger Dak does heal quicker and does come back in 4 or 5 weeks' time. But for those 4 or 5 weeks, I still don't like any of those Cowboys options.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's the thumb injury. It's not the same as Russell Wilson's last year, but look how many weeks it took for Russell Wilson to get back. So
yeah,
there's no guarantee that Dak just comes back and he just, guns blazing. So Christian McCaffrey didn't practice Wednesday, but Matt Rule did say that he's going to try to not have McCaffrey practice on Wednesdays to increase his durability. I see nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good move. So
I think it's a very good move.
That is all the injury updates and news we have. So we're going to move on to our Thursday Night Football preview. We're going to talk about each position, each star player, give you a projection based on ESPN's projection. We'll also talk on MVP and a sleeper for this game. So let's start off with the quarterbacks. 2 very good quarterbacks, 2 top 5 fantasy quarterbacks as of week 1. Let us start with Justin Herbert. I think are the Chargers away? I think they're away in this game. So
yep, they are at Arrowhead.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I had the Chargers listed first in all of these. Justin Herbert, his ESPN projection in standard scoring PPR leagues is 21.4 points. Over under on that one.
I think this game is more likely to be a shootout than not. So I would say he hits the over. I think he should comfortably have the 300-yard, 3-touchdown threshold, which puts him at 24. So that's where I would say he should hit that number.
I'll also say over. He was the quarterback 5 in week 1. Kyler had 20 points in ESPN standard leagues, like I said, against Kansas City, and Kyler did not have a good game. Fantasy-wise, he was okay, but he didn't have a good game. So I will also say over for Justin Herbert. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback 1 on the week, 22.3 points.
So the Chargers defense looked a lot better than that Cardinals defense did, but I cannot bet against the guy that just went for 340 yards and 5 touchdowns. So I'm going to go with Mahomes hitting the over as well.
Mahomes averaged 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick last year in 2 seasons against the Chargers. I know they added Khalil Mack. I know I know Derwin James is back. I know their defense is better, but still, even if you knock those stats down to like 302 touchdowns, like he's still going to have a great game. I think he still goes over. I'll go right at like 24, 25 points for Mahomes. The running backs. Austin Eckler is projected at 18.8 points, only had 11 last week. He did not have a good game, and I think he only saw 45% of the snaps.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with Eckler. I already said very early on I would not take him as my RB1. And without him finding the end zone, with him having that low of a snap count, it's going to be near impossible for him to hit that number. Like, he'll be productive as a football player, but if he doesn't find the end zone, he is not finding 18 points.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you with that. I think he's a bit touchdown dependent unless his workload really increases from week 1, which I guess it technically could, but
I mean, they had a really good game script for him, right? And he still only saw 14 rushing attempts and didn't make much of it. And Kansas City's defense is a lot better than the Raiders' defense.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm a bit really worried for Eckler.
I'm going to go under. What about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 12.2?
I'm taking the over on this one. I think they used him a lot near the goal line in passing situations. That's why he found 2 touchdowns last week. I'm not saying he's going to get a multiple touchdown game, but they gave him a good amount of workload. They used him in the passing game. He had a high snap count. I know Pacheco's there and really looks like he's going to be the rushing threat, but Clyde is going to see some good air work in this game. I think Clyde has a good game. I think he gets over the 12. I don't think he'll boom, but I think that's a good number for him.
He had one very good game against the Chargers last year. I think it was the first game. He had like over 100 yards and a touchdown. And the second game, I think he had like 35 yards or something like that. I think 13 points is doable. So I'll go with the over on this one. If they give him enough rushing attempts, I think he hits the over. Let's go to the wide receivers. Mike Williams, the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers with Keenan Allen out, 14.4 points.
I feel like everybody's going to take the over here. And it's not the bad choice, but you saw last week when Mike Williams was up against the cornerback 1, it was not pretty.
Who's the cornerback 1 on KC?
I don't know, but
there you go. Like, come on.
He did a good job locking down Hollywood Brown, which I would say is a better wide receiver than Mike Williams.
No, I don't think so. I think when Mike Williams is healthy,
when Mike Williams
is healthy, I think he's a great wide receiver.
No, I think Mike Williams is great. I like Mike Williams a lot, but I think Marquise Brown is just as good of a receiver. And, he's got the more accurate quarterback. I think he should hit the number, but his floor just proved to be so low. Like, I feel like he's the definition of boom bust as a player.
All right.
And
that's fine.
It should be a shootout, but they're going to spread that ball too much. It's going to need, even if he did find the end zone, I could see him not hitting this number.
In 2 games last year, Mike Williams averaged 4 or 5 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this over. I think he has a touchdown in this one. I think he has close to 80 yards. I think it's a guy that gets a lot of targets in this one. Joshua Palmer, one of Nick's guys for the past 2 years, 12 points.
To the moon.
I'm just going all the overs, which kind of sucks, but I like it too. I picked up Palmer in 2 leagues and I'm starting him in 2 leagues. Wide receiver 2, Herbert was gassing up Palmer during the offseason, says he's one guy to look at. I don't think he got enough targets last week. I don't think Mike Williams got enough targets. I think both of those guys are going to be guys that Herbert has to rely on week 2. You're not going to go 3 weeks without relying on guys that you have chemistry with. So I'm going to go over on this one.
Last year, Joshua Palmer, the projection was that Mike Williams was hurt way too much. And after that year, they were going to move on from Williams and slot in Joshua Palmer to be the clear stud wide receiver 2 over there. And it didn't happen because Mike Williams stayed healthy and had a dominant year as a wide receiver. And Keenan Allen was showing the health issues. So now Joshua Palmer does have the chance to prove that he's a wide receiver 2 in this league. And I think he's going to step up to the plate and take it.
What about Juju Smith-Schuster, 13.4 points? I think he had like 11 or 12 last week without a touchdown.
Yeah, he was right around that number. I think the game script should be a little bit better for him this game. I'm going to go with over.
I'll go with over as well. Devontae Adams has not had like 35 points last week against the Chargers. Casey is going to spread the ball around a little bit, but I think Juju's at another level besides those other receivers. So I think Mahomes feeds him a bit more and he hits that over. Mecole Hardman, 11.3. I'm going under. Like somebody has to go under here.
Hardman's always weeks. It's, is he going to catch the 50-yard touchdown? Like that's really what's going to determine it. And without Tyreek, he's more likely to, but I'm going to bet more often than not he's not scoring a 50-yard touchdown.
Moving on to the tight ends, Gerald Everett, 7.9.
I love Everett in this matchup. I think he's a great play. They showed 4 targets to him last week, caught 3 of them, had a solid game for a tight end, and he's going to be able to have a high efficiency and high probability of finding the end zone in this matchup. So for me, I love Everett this week. I think he's a great streaming option. I dropped Cole Kmet for him in a league. I think if you have Herbert and you're uncertain at your tight end position, this is a great stack for you. So for me, I like Everett. I like the matchup. I think he's hitting 10 points, no problem.
For me, I'm 7.9 so low. So I think he could hit the over. I'm just going to go the under here because I think that it's going to be a Mike Williams and Joshua Palmer show. And I think Eckler gets a lot of love too. Just not enough targets to go around as much as they will spread the ball. I think he needs a touchdown to really hit this over unless he's going to get, 4 or 5 receptions. Then it's possible, but I'm not sure he gets that with the rest of these guys. And lastly, Mr. Travis Kelce.
I'm always betting on the over with this guy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I've just learned that there's no reason to say he's not going to hit the over. He had almost 200 yards in one game against the Chargers last year. His average against the Chargers last year was 150 yards and a touchdown. Like, yes, I don't even know did I even read off the number? I don't think I did. The number is 16. I didn't even read it off because we were both going to go over. Yeah, over for sure. All right. Who is your MVP of this game?
MVP, you got to go with who you think's just putting up the most points or the most valuable. I think the true difference maker every week with Kansas City is going to be Travis Kelce. He should always be a 10 to 15 to 20 point more than your opponent's tight end, depending on who they have. So for me, it's Travis Kelce. He's going to see close to double-digit targets. There's only one tight end that's all over double-digit targets last year, which I'm not going to spoil because he's my must-start for tomorrow's episode, which you guys should tune into. Cheap little plug over there. But yeah, Kelce always has the upside of a touchdown, multiple touchdowns, great after the catch, always going to get monster targets, always going to get monster yards, something that other tight ends just do not consistently put up in this league. Kelce's the biggest differentiator in any matchup. Quarterback one with whoever your quarterback was drafted will always be close. Running back matchups always be close. Wide receivers typically close. Tight end, it's always Kelce, then the next guy. So for me, Kelce's a clear MVP in this one.
Maybe I'm just like going crazy here. Maybe I shouldn't say the MVP, but you know what? I'm going to say Joshua Palmer. I'm going to say that if you picked him up on waivers and you played him this week and, he really needs somebody in your flex spot, I think he could be an MVP to save you in your flex spot. If you're in a situation like me that did not want to touch Darnell Mooney or didn't want to touch Robert Woods, I think he has a chance to be your MVP. And look, I'm just being clear. My prediction here is so boom or bust. I could easily say Kelce is going to have a great game. I really want to say Mike Williams because he has a great game. But for the strict point of if you needed a waiver pickup, if you needed a plug-and-play guy, I think Joshua Palmer produces for you. What about a sleeper? Is Joshua Palmer your sleeper, or do you have another guy that might be a sleeper per se?
So I was in between two. One was Palmer, but since you already talked about him, I'll go with the other one. Mine's Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He saw a very high snap share for what people projected him to start the season with. I think they work him in more week 2. I think on the short week, they're gonna find ways to score. They're gonna beat them over the top. Derwin James is gonna be on Kelsey all game. You're gonna have the top corners from the Chargers guarding Juju and probably Hardman. So MVS is the wide receiver 3 over there at best, but the wide receiver 3 for Patrick Mahomes has the upside of putting up numbers. We haven't truly seen it yet because, we've only watched Tyreek for a little while in Kansas City, only for one game. So we don't know how that ball is going to get spread, but Mahomes already told you he's rotating who's the next guy up. And this week, I'm going to think it's MVS. I think he has the better matchup over a cornerback 3. I think he's got that deep threat. You'll see him in the slot. You'll see him in the outside. They'll move him around a lot. They'll put him in motion. I wouldn't be surprised if he caught 2 swing arounds. So he's gonna have, I think, a safer floor than what the projection would be. And with that speed and that monster speed and that ability to go over the top, as long as the O-line can hold up Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa for 2, 3, 4 plays in the game, there's a lot of upside for that big bomb touchdown, and that's going to go MVS's way.
I got the deepest of sleepers that is probably only playable for daily fantasy leagues, and that's okay. DeAndre Carter on the Chargers last year, last week. He had 3 receptions on 4 targets, 64 yards on a touchdown. He was the highest scoring Charger with 15 fantasy points out of the wide receiver position. I'm just saying it looked like Herbert had some chemistry with him last week. I know he'll be the wide receiver 3 on the scene, but if he truly decides to spread the ball around, if he gets a touchdown and another 3 targets, again, super, super deep. If you're in like a 16 or a crazy 18-man league and you're looking for a really deep sleeper, I don't think anybody's going to play him, but that's okay. Like if you really need like a really cheap daily fantasy play for the hell of it tomorrow night, or tonight, I should say, since the episode comes out Thursday, give DeAndre Carter a look because I think he can get some looks tonight. I would much rather say that my MVP is going to be Mike Williams and then the sleeper's Joshua Palmer, but I'm going a bit bold. So I'm going to go with DeAndre Carter for this one. It's a very, very, very deep sleeper, which means if he goes there and craps the bed, again, he's not supposed to be starting anyway. I'm just saying he could be a deep sleeper.
I like the call. I like it. It's bold.
It is bold. All right, guys. That's our show for today. Thursday show is going to be super short, but that's okay. It's just to get you ready for your Thursday night football game. Next time you hear
real quick. Your Chargers and Chiefs, none of them should be in a flex spot. Keep that in mind. Good
call. That's a good call. We should try to remind you of that every Thursday. But yes, do not flex your Chargers or your Chiefs. Keep those flex spots open in case there's other injuries and stuff to worry about. The next time you hear from us is tomorrow, Friday, September 16th. We're going to talk about week 2. We're going to give you our all boom, all bust teams. We're going to give you rapid fire start sits, all for your flex spots. Going to help you with all those really tough decisions for your week 2 lineups. It'll be your longest show of the week, but that's okay. That's how Friday is going to be. We want to make sure you're the most prepared you could be for week 2 before, answering your questions on Sunday morning. Again, you can listen to that show tomorrow on Friday, like all our other episodes on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, anywhere where you could find the podcast, you could find us, the Primetime Fantasy Podcast. If you'd rather watch tomorrow's show, like all our other shows, it's available on our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Keep connecting with us on social media at PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy Thursday Night Football.